everyone kind of what you do and a little bit about yourself, why you got into this whole area of study and focus, because I think for a lot of people, it's always a different kind of motivation, I feel like. So go into that a little bit for people who don't know a whole ton about your story.
Yeah, so I mean, like yourself, I was a basketball player my whole life. My career unfortunately ended earlier than yours. Yours is still going, so you're blessed for that. Kind of ended after high school. I tried the college route, wasn't really working out for me. But so from that moment going forward, I really started falling in love with the training aspect of it because I started working out, I'd say seriously, summer before my senior year of high school. I kind of like lived in that weight room that whole summer. So I got a lot stronger, and that's when I really started falling in love with that process. I mean, even at that time, I probably only weighed a buck 45, soaking wet. Walked around like I felt like I weighed 200 pounds, but I was only about a buck 45. Made sure the coach listed me at 165 on the roster. But yeah, that's when I fell in love with the training. And from there, when I went on to school, went on to college and tried to play a D3 route at William Patterson, wound up not making the team and decided, I in some way want to be involved with the sport. So training was like kind of like a no brainer at that point. So I wound up at Temple, which is where I started really going through my undergrad work for my bachelor's. And at Temple, I was blessed with the opportunity to work with the basketball team there, um, which was an awesome experience. Awesome experience. They were a tournament team. At that time, every year they were a tournament team. Now we were unfortunately always eliminated first round, but nonetheless a tournament team. So we were, a solid program. We lost to Kawhi Leonard, actually. And maybe you'll correct me if I'm wrong. I can't remember. I always miss this up. If it was San Jose State or San Diego State, it was one of those that Kawhi
San
was
Diego
on.
State.
Yep, there it was. So, and this was one of the years. It was one of the 12-5 upsets. We were the fifth seed. They were the 12th seed. And they beat us, I'm pretty sure it's pretty handily. It might have been by like 20 or something. But either way, that's kind of when like this whole journey of mine, I guess, started. So from there, I had to do an internship. And my internship wound up being here at Parisi Speed School, and I was blessed enough that they hired me. And we do things a little differently here. We're definitely more speed based. I am a certified strength and conditioning specialist by the NSCA, so a lot of my backgrounds in there. I love the weight room, so I'm big in the weight room, but I'm kind of my foundation is very speed and very movement oriented, which I think is huge because anything I do in the weight room kind of you know, goes back to that, which is important, I think, for athletes because athletes not only have to be strong, but athletes have to move. Unless, of course, you're a power lifter or whatever. But the majority of the people I work with are all field sport, court sport athletes, like yourself: basketball, football, track and field, baseball, soccer. So yeah, it's been a long ride, and I'm pretty blessed. I don't really have many complaints. This is I get to wear shorts to work. That's pretty cool. You know what I mean? I get to wear my hat to work. That's pretty cool. Not many people can say they could do that, but yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about the specifics of the training, right? So look, you worked with Division 1 athletes, you still do, right? And I think that's awesome, right? You've worked with professional athletes too, guys who played overseas, all that kind of stuff too, right? So
hmm
talk a little bit about what you learned from Temple that you now say, okay, like what do you do when you're implementing workouts today, right? Like how do you keep track of different trends and all that kind of stuff when you implement into those workouts?
Yeah. So this is really cool because when I worked with Temple, that was, I mean, at this point, maybe 11 years ago. And when I think back to that time, it's like I didn't know a thing. And each year, like the learning never stops. So each year, like I'm learning more and more and more. Even now, I think 5 years back, like I didn't know a thing. You know what I mean? This industry is always evolving and always changing. So Temple was my first experience to like performance training with athletes. Whereas before that, like I said, I was all in the weight room. I was all like, oh, squat, bench, deadlift, like which is important. Don't get me wrong, that's important. But Temple was my first exposure to like performance training, whereas like the movement got involved. A lot of single leg work stuff got involved. A lot of core based training got involved. And then what muscles need to be activated at what time. So that was kind of my first exposure to it. And then again, that just kind of fed my hunger and desire to learn more, to kind of improve myself and keep being able to put myself in a position to put athletes like yourself into better positions to succeed going forward.
Yeah. So talk a little bit about trends you've seen, at least like what are stuff that you've learned now that maybe even a year ago you didn't really ever consider when you're training certain athletes. Because I think it's always interesting because the game's always evolving, right? Not just basketball, but every sport, football, baseball, soccer, right? And you train people in different all those different sports. So I like to understand, like, what kind of trends did you see this year? You're like, okay, I need to start implementing some of this stuff because I didn't notice this as much last year. I think this is really important.
Yeah, so one of the biggest things that I'm kind of learning as a trend, and I think I'm getting better at it, and the industry's getting better at it each year, is everybody is different and everybody has to be treated differently. So, for example, if you're working with a full team, maybe 5 6 years ago I'd put together a program for that team that every single person on the team would do, whereas now if I'm putting together a program for this team, that program might be tweaked for each individual on that team. Now the goal of the program might be the same and might be have some very similar trends and processes or methods, but each individual athlete might be treated a little bit differently to make it more specific towards them. So that's definitely one thing that I've gotten better at, and I think the industry is getting better at too. I mean, not everybody's going to squat the same way. So a certain squat setup or a squat stance is going to be different per athlete, right? So that's, you got to keep those things in mind when you're working with a group of athletes and when you're working with different individuals each hour or what have you. And another thing would be like, we work with the Vipers a lot. So I don't know, for people listening, there's a methodology that I use called the Viper Pros. You can Google it, you can look it up. It's VIPR Pro, PRO. Um, Using sub-maximal loads, putting yourself in kind of odd positions, that is huge and beneficial, especially for basketball. I can do a whole program just based around the Viper Pro, just putting your body in this different position that might mimic or emulate how you would be in a lane when you're driving the lane and you're kind of weaving through traffic, things like that. Being strong in different planes of motion that you might not consider is huge. And I think that's a trend that's picking up steam and growing. And I think it's a beautiful thing.
If you like that clip, subscribe to Shred Takes podcasts for more content and videos uploaded on this channel.